We thought for this section we'd just look at going back to the pandemic. I'm really sorry we keep mentioning it, but unfortunately that is a thing that happens. So we've got pandemic and how it affected our fandoms. So I thought we'd just take a quick look at perhaps maybe the delayed films, and then obviously the production stopped due to COVID regulations and stuff. So there was a couple of films that got put back a little bit, like Black Widow, I know for a fact.
Yeah, Black Widow was meant to be May the 6th of 2020, then got pushed to July 2020, and then got delayed until July 2021 when it finally was released.
Yeah, which I think is quite sad, because I do kind of think that Black Widow almost suffered from that a little bit.
I guess, maybe. I think with Marvel, yeah, there was, like, because I think Shang-Chi, or no, was it I think Eternals was also meant to be last year, even though it ends up being the third one now in 2021. Yeah. The Black Widow and Eternals were meant to be last year, but obviously they had pushed them both back to this year. So we had Black Widow pretty much as soon as cinemas reopened, then Shang-Chi, then Eternals in November, and then December Spider-Man No Way Home, and then on top of that we had all the shows. We had WandaVision.
Yeah, it felt very rushed this year.
We had so many, because obviously the TV shows could get released anyway, but I think they got delayed because of post-production with the pandemic. So you had WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, What If, Loki, and Hawkeye? Was there another one?
Yeah,
Am I being stupid here? Was there another one?
I can't remember any. I'm sorry if we missed it out, but like,
yeah.
I wonder in some ways if, like, for Eternals and what was the other movie?
Black Widow was meant to be 2020.
Yeah, so I think they were kind of both affected differently. I would say, for example, I think Black Widow, sadly, was affected because, like, you did have that long pause where you went. It almost affected how I saw how far time had gone on. Sort of, I was like, wait, she's still back there.
Because prior to that, the recent film, Marvel MCU film, I'm pretty sure it was Far From Home.
Yeah.
Which was July 2019, sorry.
Yeah, so there was a massive gap, and I think that almost affected Black Widow because it was a carry-on story. Meanwhile, Eternals, you could probably push that back.
You could put that anywhere.
And nobody would really have noticed.
And even, I guess, No Way Home.
I mean, is there any hardcore Eternal fans out there? Like,
I enjoyed Eternals.
You enjoyed Eternals?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It wasn't a big full-on scale thing, but I enjoyed it. I guess also, I'm quite glad that even the shows that I've watched that are set in today's age, or today's, like, like 2022, for example, don't reference COVID that much. Or,
I mean, I think we had a discussion about this, but we were wondering, should the pandemic actually be portrayed on film?
A prime example was, I went to see the new Scream film in January.
Yeah.
And even though it's 2022, it's set in 2021 because it's set 25 years after the original film, which is 1996. And it's like COVID doesn't exist. They just completely ignored it despite it being set in 2021. Everything else is 2021, but there's no COVID, and I liked it because I don't want to walk into a cinema where you go to watch a film.
Yeah, you're trying to escape.
It's escapism.
Right,
and then go boom, here's the pandemic slammed in your face.
Yeah, and I think for some genres it works. I would say maybe sci-fi and then the odd soap. It probably works.
Yeah, and I'm glad that...
And it can be pulled off to an extent.
Yeah, I'm glad that Doctor Who also didn't address it at all.
Yeah, it's nice to see a world where COVID's not a thing. And it's just, I think it's even more interesting just to see how COVID's affected production, actually, as well. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's still films that are delayed, like Top Gun.
Yeah,
second Top Gun, much to my dad's dismay, I think
it's
is still delayed till July, and it was meant to come out, I think it was meant to be around my birthday, which is December 2021, and then they delayed it again, even though cinemas were well and truly open.
Yeah.
Like No Way Home.
I think it's kind of almost, I think we pointed this out, and we kind of laughed at it, I think it's become a bit of a joke now between us, is that there's not as many crowd scenes anymore. It's like, you wouldn't know.
There is that, and I know for a fact, and I'll keep going back to No Way Home, this is the film that I've, like, absolutely adore recently.
Yeah.
There's scenes that were meant to be a bigger scale that were cut, like the motorway scene when Doc Ock appears, and then Green Goblin appears very briefly, but then obviously they get transported into Doc Strange's basement.
Yeah.
There was meant to be a fight scene between Doc Ock and Green Goblin on that motorway, but COVID happened. And then they also wanted to bring back Kirsten Dunst and Emma Stone as Mary Jane and Gwen. I don't know how they've done that. I guess it makes sense because the way the whole storyline works, but they couldn't because of COVID, but also Emma Stone's pregnant, I'm pretty sure, as well.
Yeah.
But there was stuff they had to cut, so it did affect
I mean, you
stuff
are
to an
starting to
extent.
see just how much like the TV industry and like movies are having to now start to kind of bend over backwards just to get through like COVID regulations. And I think there's some scenes that, you know what, it works if there's less people there, but there is a certain, I know for a fact, I don't think I've mentioned Snowpiercer enough today, but
you only mentioned it once,
did
which
I
I'm
only
surprised
mention it
that
once?
with
That's
you.
great. I think I mentioned The Witcher more than Snowpiercer.
Yeah.
But I would say that it really doesn't help that this is meant to be a massive train with thousands of people on it, and we seem to be stuck with the same 10 characters.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then they had to kill off half the crew. Half the crew? Oh, you know. Half the, they needed to kill off half
Well, that went dark.
half the cast off screen because it just wouldn't work with regulations. And it's kind of sad actually because it's kind of disappointing to have someone die off screen. So yeah.
Yeah, that's never a good thing.
I think we also wanted to quickly just touch on binge watching because now we've got nothing else to do.
Well, now we do again, but in the pandemic,
we had nothing else to do.
There is times that you have nothing to do, and I never properly binge stuff, but I definitely watch it a lot quicker than what I used to.
Yeah, and I kind of like how some streaming services are now bringing in a like weekly release thing rather than just.
I like weekly releases
because I feel like sometimes it doesn't work if you watch stuff.
It also gives you time to analyze and discuss.
Yeah.
You know, with us two with episodes. What's happening? Whereas if you binge it all, that's it. You've got the start and the finale all in a wonder if you want to.
Yeah, it sounds pretty shallow.
You might as well just watch an extended film.
Then you kind of lose track of how time is working in that one because days have passed for them, but hours have only passed for you, and you're like, wait, but what? That's not. I mean.
Yeah, and it takes it away because then everything. You know, when it comes to weekly, you can go, oh, this happened in that episode such, whereas if you binge all one thing, it all just blends into one long,
it just becomes one
tenuous thing. So I like weekly releases.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and I think this little first show we've kind of started to discuss a bit more about how the pandemic has affected and how it will continue to affect.
But I think in the next shows we won't, because now after this we're going to go into a different fandom each week.
You'll be happy to hear, listeners, that you will not be having to listen to the COVID or pandemic ever again. Well, not ever again, but you know, on this show
from us
switch
anyway
off for an hour and you won't have to listen to it.
So
because you'll be going into that.
So what's next week's show then?
Next week you're going to be presenting this one. It's going to be Marvel Phase 4. So.
Oh yeah.
So that wasn't very enthusiastic.
No, I'm sorry. It was enthusiastic. I'm excited to do that one because a lot to talk about Phase 4.
Yeah,
a lot more to come in Phase 4. So you have to wait till next week for us to talk about that.
It's going to be a good week next week, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, so if you want to tune in next week, we're going to be back here at the same time, Tuesdays 2 till 3, and you can keep up to date with us on our social media. We do now have a Twitter, which was...
So either as much on Twitter. We're supposed to consider we're journalist students, so
yeah, Twitter.
We'll learn on the job.
We'll learn on the job, exactly. So we have our Twitter and our Instagram, and you can find us in both of those at the Geek Show _GCU. So until then, we'll just leave you now with I'd Do Anything for Love by Meatloaf as a little,
R.I.P. Meatloaf.
Yeah. So yeah, another great song to finish us off.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you.